Good evening, dear students. Today we have our uh, second session of the first tutoring, um, and this is the preparation for the first evaluations. My name is Adriana Boed, and I'll be in charge of the tutorings for this course. And today we'll go over two of the main grammatical topics that you will need for the first parts of the course. So let's start with the simple present. First, we'll go over the verb to be and the different elements that we need to consider on the simple present. We'll divide the explanation of the simple present into the use of the verb to be and also the other verbs. And for each of them, we will go over the affirmative sentences, negative sentences, and also the questions. Additionally, we will be working with comparatives and superlatives as well. So before getting into the simple present, it's important that you remember, or that you have clear, the personal pronouns, and that we will group them into different in three different groups. So we will have I, that even though it's singular, sometimes it will behave as the rest of the singular pronouns, but sometimes it will behave as the plural pronouns, or as it is the case of the simple present with the verb to be, it will stand by itself. So for example, in the case of I, in the simple present using the verb to be, we will use the conjugation am. And so we can say, I am happy, for example. Then with he, she, or it, we will use the form of be that will be is. And we can say things like he is tall, she is fast, or it is big. Then in the plural pronouns, we will have the conjugation are, and so we can say things like they are tall, we are fast, and you are big. Okay, these are some examples. In the negative sentences, we will use the same conjugations, but what we'll do is to place the negative particle not. The negative particle not, in the case of the verb to be, it can be by itself, so we just place the verb to be and then not. In the case of I, we will say I am not. And in the case of the singular pronouns, so we will say is plus not, that will make it into isn't. In English, we tend to use a lot of abbreviations, and we use them both in written language and also in spoken language. Only in really formal written language we don't use abbreviations, but usually we do. Then we will say he isn't tall, she isn't fast, or it isn't big, for example. In the case of the plural forms, we will say they aren't tall, we aren't fast, and you aren't big. Okay, those are some examples on how we can use the verb to be in affirmative and negative sentences. Then in the case of the questions, what we'll do is to make a subject-verb inversion. That means that we'll place first the verb to be, then the subject, and then the rest of the sentence. So as you can see in the example of the affirmative sentence, we have first the subject, that in this case it is we, then we have the verb to be, that in this case is are, and the rest of the sentence, in this case it will be at home. So for the question, we will place first the verb to be, in this case are, then the subject, in this case we, and then the rest of the sentence, that it will be at home. So we'll pass from saying we are at home, and then we will ask are we at home? So see that we do the subject-verb inversion, but also we'll change the punctuation of the sentence. We'll change from the period to the question mark, and also the intonation of the question as well. For the question, are we at home? We can have two possible short answers. So we can say, yes, we are, or we can say, no, we aren't. Depending if we want to provide an affirmative sentence answer or a negative answer. Then we have another example. He is late. And in the case of the question, we'll do the same thing, subject-verb inversion, and we'll place first the verb, saying, is he late? And for the affirmative answer, we'll say, yes, he is. For the negative answer, we'll say, no, he isn't. Up to here, do you have any questions?
No.
I cannot hear you. Let me see what's going
on. No, teacher, continue.
No, I think the problem is it's on my computer, so just give me a second. Okay, let me see. Can someone speak to check if I can hear you?
Can you hear us now?
No, Steven, I can hear you. Let me see. I don't know what's
Hello,
going on.
hello, hi.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys. Well, what we will do now is to continue with the simple present, but in this case using any other verb. Okay, so we already studied the verb to be, now with any other verb. We all divided the same way: affirmative sentence, negative sentence, and the question. So what we will do first in the affirmative sentence is to have the subject and then the verb. And as you can see in the formula that I provide you with, we have an S into parentheses. It means that with some subjects we'll need to add an S to the verb, but with some other subjects we won't. So when we use he, she, or it, or its equivalent, then to the verb we'll need to add an S at the end. So for example, if we use I, we don't need to do anything to the verb, and we can say, I update the software. But if we use he, then we'll need to add an S to the verb. So we will say, he installs the programs. Okay, so don't forget to add this S because it's like the clue of this tense. Then in the case of they, we, and you, we are not going to add an S. We just keep the verb the same way. And we will say they communicate with people. In the case of the negative sentences, we will have first the subject. And remember that I told you that with the verb to be, we just place the negative particle not. In the case of the rest of the verbs, we will need the help of the auxiliary. And the auxiliary that we will use is do. But with he, she, and it, we will add es. So we won't say do, but we will say does. And since we already added the s here, then we don't need to add the s into the verb anymore. So we will have first the subject, then the auxiliary, then not, then the verb, and then the rest of the sentence. So for example, in the case of I, we'll say I don't update the software. But in the case of he, she, or it, we'll say he doesn't install the programs. So as you see, we changed the auxiliary, but we don't add the s into the verb. And in the case of the plural subjects or pronouns, as they, we, and you, we are not going to add the s, and we will use don't. They don't communicate with people. So in here, we do the same thing as we said in the verb to be of the abbreviation. The construction will be do not, but usually we will use don't, or does not, but we will use doesn't. And for the question, one more time, we will need to make inversion. In this case, the inversion will be between the auxiliary and the subject. So we'll place first the auxiliary, then the subject, and then the verb. And again, we don't need to add the s to the verb, because if it's he, she, it, we will use does, which already has the s. So we will say, do you update the software? Or does he install the programs? Do they communicate with people? And in this case, in the short answers, we will answer with the auxiliary as well. So for example, do they communicate with people? Then for the affirmative answer, we will say yes, they do. And in negative, we will say no, they don't. But if we are using he, so for example, we will ask, does he install the programs? The affirmative answer will be yes, he does. And the negative one will be no, he doesn't. And that's something that you have to remember, that with he, she, it, we use does. Then as you can notice here, in the affirmative sentence, we were using I. In the negative sentence, we were using the subject pronoun I as well. But in the question, I changed it to you, because it happens exactly the same thing that we do in Spanish. So if we ask with you, we will answer with I. If we have I, then we will answer with you. And it's the same thing that we do in Spanish, the same change. Okay, so don't get confused with that one. Any questions up to here? Okay, perfect. Okay. Sí, dígame. Ajá, cuando es con I, they, we, you, ¿verdad? Yo, ellos, nosotros y ustedes, vamos a usar tú. Y cuando es él, ella o eso, vamos a usar does. Con el do, ajá. Ajá, se escribe con O, se pronuncia con do. Ajá. Welcome. Okay. Any other? Ajá. Y el does. Bueno, si estamos usando otros verbos que no sea el verbo to be, necesitamos el auxiliar do or does cuando estamos en presente simple. Welcome. Dígame, Olma. Do. Ajá. Sí, se dice does. Ajá, sí. Bueno, eso sería todo un tema de otro momento, ¿verdad? La pronunciación inglesa. Es un poco complicada, pero no tenemos reglas, sino patrones que tenemos que seguir. Okay, Eduardo. Yes, I can hear you. Okay, that's a very good question, Eduardo. We add the s, as you can see it in the formula here. We add the s in the affirmative sentences with the pronouns or the equivalent subject as he, she, or it. The subjects, the singular subjects. Okay, we add the s. But in the case of the negative sentences or the questions, the auxiliary does already has the s, and that's why in a formula, as you can see, the verb does not include the s. So only in the affirmative sentences. Welcome. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, so remember that we went over the simple present with the verb to be and the simple present with other verbs. So in this tense, we only use one verb in the sentence, one a simple verb, like it doesn't have the two parts. So if we have the verb to be, we cannot have another verb. If we have another verb, we cannot have the verb to be. So to check if you understood, what we are going to do is to play a Kahoot, and I will share the screen and the code for you to join the game. Like, I assume most of you have played Kahoot, but if not, it's like some sort of interactive activity in which you can join with the QR code, with the link, or with the number, and there will be a set of 10 questions and 4 possible answers per question. The ones who get the question correct will obtain points, and the fastest you answer, the more points you get. Bueno, mientras se van conectando, aquí estoy leyendo los comentarios. Sí, Alison, es la misma sesión del miércoles. Recuerden que para este periodo, para este curso, como la matrícula es tan grande, se van a habilitar 2 opciones de tutoría para cada una de las tutorías. 2 horarios, ustedes se unen al que les quede más fácil. Jairel, dígame. Sí, ajá. Sí, no, la sesión del miércoles quedó grabada pero sin audio, entonces la que les voy a compartir es la de hoy. Ujú. Es que no todos están asignados a mi curso, entonces yo mañana, porque tengo que renderizar el video, entonces mañana se lo comparto a los profesores tutores para que ellos lo compartan en en el campus virtual. Ujú. Me parece que sí. Yes, I can hear you. Uh-huh, yes, sure. Yeah, today we'll go over simple present with the verb to be and other verbs, and comparative and superlative. Mm-hmm. In the orientación académica, there you can find the dates and also the units that we'll be going over. I don't know them from memory and I don't have them here handy. Welcome. Veo por aquí más preguntas. Dice más recursos didácticos que libro para el curso. Bueno, el material oficial que les da la U son los libros que tienen que estudiar. Igual en internet, si googlean, ahí encuentran información de todos estos temas porque son temas muy básicos, muy sencillos. Nayara pregunta, no hay grupo de WhatsApp. Eh, ujú, ok. Olman, dígame. It doesn't matter, Daniela, nada más lo puede jugar ahí o sea, usted lo va viendo y lo va respondiendo para usted misma. Les voy a pedir sí que traten de mantener el chat lo más limpio posible para que no, porque me cuesta un poco manejar todas las pantallas, entonces para que me ayuden no estar mandando cosas en el chat innecesarias. Vamos a ver. Puede escanear el código QR con el teléfono o con el pin de juego o con el link que les mandé en el chat. Uh-huh. Ok, listo. No pongan las respuestas del juego en el chat para que no se haga mucho spam, por favor, y mantener el chat lo más limpio posible. Okay, let's start with the ones who were able to join. The rest, you can just follow the questions and try to answer by yourselves. So question number 1, it says he in a hospital. And 15 people got the correct answer, which is he works. Since we are using the subject he, then remember that we need to add the s. This is an affirmative sentence and we add the s. So he works in a hospital. We cannot have the auxiliary in the affirmative sentence. And here, like, 2 people got the green one with the 2 options. Dígame, Jennifer y Antonio. Primero Jennifer, luego Antonio. No importa, nada más lo contesta ahí mentalmente, sale la pregunta y las opciones, es una práctica, entonces no hay problema. Jennifer. Antonio. Okay. So just join the game, like doing the practice by yourself. There is no problem. It's just the practice. Olman. We can say do work. Okay, sí lo podemos decir. Gramaticalmente no al nivel que ustedes están estudiando el presente simple no es lo correcto, se usa solo como para hacer un énfasis en el idioma, pero no a este nivel no se confundan, no pongan el auxiliar con el verbo, solo en oraciones negativas y en preguntas. Okay, so let's continue with number 2. Well, we got Paola in the first place. Congratulations, Paola. Now, question number 2. It says, does he work at customs and immigration? What will be the short answer for this one? Okay, we got 18 people with the correct answer, which was yes, he does. So remember that we said that when we have a yes-no question, we will answer with the same auxiliary. So if the question is with does he, and then we are answering with he does, except if we are asking for you, and we will answer with I. Lo mismo que hacemos en español, ¿verdad? Menos que sea usted trabaja en tal cosa, sí, yo trabajo. So we do the change of the subject. But in the case of does he, then we will answer yes, he does. For the negative question, for the negative answer, we'll need here to say no, he, instead of isn't, no, he doesn't. That's why the green one is incorrect. We cannot answer the red one that says yes, he is, because the question was not with the verb to be. We are using another verb, the verb work. And in the case of the blue one, we have a combination of affirmative and negative, which is not correct. Let's see, the first place now is for Oscar. Number 3 is it says, do you chocolate milk? Okay, and the correct answer was chosen by 27 people, which was like. Do you like chocolate milk? Very good. So we use the auxiliary, do, and the action verb, like. Excellent. The first place still for Oscar. And we'll continue with question number 4. He not want to go to the movies. Okay, and the correct answer was does. He doesn't want to go to the movies. We are using the verb want and the subject pronoun he, and that's why we use does. Now Diana is in the first place. Question number 5, it says it a beautiful day today. We got 28 people with the correct answer, and it is a beautiful day today. Very good. Diana keeps the first place. And number 6, what time you go to the university? It says, what time do you go to the university? And see that here we have an interrogative question. What we did was to add the WH elements at the beginning, but the structure is the same as if we started with do, then you, and then the rest of the sentence, the verb and the rest of the sentence. Diana keeps the first place. Very good, Diana. Number 7, it says, your dog like bread. Does your dog like bread? Very good. Diana is still in the first place. Question number 8, it says, where Gustavo live? Okay, this one was a difficult one, it seems. Okay, we have something different here. Like, we don't have he, but we have Gustavo, that it will be the equivalent. Recuerden que los subject pronouns los utilizamos para sustituir sujetos. En este caso, Gustavo equivale a él, lo mismo que hacemos en español. So we can say where he live. Then the verb in this question will be live. If we have live, then it means we cannot have is, because is will be the verb to be. And if we have live, then we'll need an auxiliary. Since our subject pronoun corresponds to he, that's why we use does and we don't use do. Okay, 14 people got this one correct. Dayana is still in the first place. Number 9, it says when your parents have lunch. Same thing here. Your parents, it'll correspond to they. When they have lunch. And we got 16 people with the correct answer. That was the auxiliary do. Very good. We have the verb have, so we will need an auxiliary. In this case, as I told you, your parents correspond to they, and with they we use do. So for that same reason, we cannot use does. Does will be only for singular pronouns. Dayana is still in the first place, and now we move to number 10, the last one. She like hamburgers. And the correct answer was does. And in this case, most of you got it correct. Very good. Does she like hamburgers? Let's see. In the podium we got for the third place, Paola. Congratulations, Paola. Then the second place is for Dayana. Dayana, what happened? And Jose, very good. Jose, you got the first place at the very end of the game. Excellent. Okay, so let's return to our presentation. And now we can continue with the next topic, that is the comparatives and superlatives. We use these two elements to make comparisons. Basically, the main difference is that when we do a comparative comparison, then we will be taking two elements and deciding on a characteristic that they have in common. But when we use the superlative, then we'll be taking out one element of a group of elements. So when we see the examples, I think it will be easier to understand. And we do comparatives and superlatives with adjectives and adverbs. Remember that an adjective is what modifies the noun, while an adverb is what modifies the verb. So that's the main difference between adjectives and adverbs. To make the comparisons, we all need to follow some rules. And basically, we will divide the adjectives or adverbs depending on the length of the word. So if it is a one syllable word, such as all, sheep, or high, what we will do is to add er for the comparative and est for the superlative. So for example, all will get into older in the comparative, but the oldest in the superlative. Cheap will be cheaper in the comparative, the cheapest in the superlative. And high will be higher in the comparative and the highest in the superlative. When we have one syllable words but they are compounded by a consonant, a vowel, and a consonant, we'll need to double the last consonant. So for example, hot, which is spelled H-O-T, will be coming to hotter. And as you can see, it'll be H-O-T-T-E-R. So we double the last consonant. That'll be for the comparative. In the case of the superlative, we'll do the same thing, just that we'll say the hottest, but we double the last consonant. Big will be coming to bigger for comparative and the biggest for superlative. Then when we have two syllable adjectives or adverbs which end in Y, what we'll do is to change the Y into an I. So for example, healthy will become into healthier for the comparative, and for the superlative it will be the healthiest. Happy will be happier and the happiest. But when we have adjectives that are longer, like 2 or more syllables, we all need to add the particle more for the comparative or the most for the superlative, and then the adjective. But as you can see, we are not going to change anything into the adjective. A really common mistake is that students tend to add more or the most, and then they also want to add the er or est to the adjective. Okay, so we cannot place the two of them. We can say, for example, for famous, more famous, or the most famous. But we can also say the opposite in the case of the long ones. So we can say less famous or the least famous. So this will be like más famoso que o el más famoso. But we can say menos famoso que o el menos famoso. So we can have like the two ways in the comparison. And as in most things in English, we will have an exception or irregular adjectives. The good thing is that in this topic, it's just like content adjectives or adverbs that will change. So for example, good will change into better for the comparative and best for the superlative. Bad will be worse and the worst, and far will be farther or further, and the farthest and the furthest. And we can use any of the two spellings. That will be okay. Then over here we have some sample sentences that I think will help you to understand what we have in the chart. So following with the structure that we use for the simple present, I'll provide you first with the formula. So in this case, to make a comparison, a comparative comparison, we'll have first the subject, then the verb, then the comparative form, then the particle than, and then the object. This particle than that I included in capital letters corresponds to que. Okay, like when we are comparing two elements or two people or two objects, so we will say something is more expensive than. Always we'll need than. Ese than corresponde a que. But you have to be careful not to confuse this than with that. Remember, that will be que, but in affirmative sentences. Then we will have what, that it will be que, but in questions, and then that will be que, but in comparative sentences. So for example, we can say an affirmative sentence, Anne is taller than her sister. A negative sentence, Anne isn't taller than her sister. And in the case of the question, we all do the same thing, subject-verb inversion. Is Anne taller than her sister? And as you can see, we have examples of the three forms, affirmative, negative, and question. Then I also included examples related to computer terms, that is what you're studying. So for example, that computer is, we can say either more or less expensive than the other. Or that computer isn't more expensive than the other. Is that computer, let's say, less expensive than the other? Okay, so you can use the construction with more or with less when you have long adjectives. What you don't have to forget is the particle then at the end of any comparative sentence. Any question up to here of the comparatives? De los comparativos, ¿alguna pregunta? Nos faltan los superlativos. Okay. Okay, good. So let's see the examples of the superlative sentences. Again, we have the formula first. We will place the subject, then the verb. Then we are going to place the particle da, the article in this case, da. Then the superlative, and then the object. So for example, we'll say, Anne is the tallest of her family. Anne isn't the tallest of her family in the negative sentence. And in the question, is Anne the tallest of her family? And notice that, as I told you, in the case of the superlative, we are comparing Anne, not anymore with her sister, but in this case with all the members of her family. So we are taking one element out of a bigger group of elements. Then in the case of computers, we can do the same thing. We can say that computer is the most or the least expensive of all. In here, we are not giving a very specific group of elements, but just saying in general of all. Then that computer isn't the most, for example, expensive of all. Or is that computer, let's say, the least expensive of all? Okay, so that's important that you take into account. In the case of the comparative, we have two elements that have at least one characteristic in common, that is the one we are using to compare. And in the case of the superlative, we will take one element out of a biggest group. Okay, questions up to here? No? Okay, good. So we are going to do an activity. This case is not a Kahoot, it's another site that you can use to practice as well. And it is named Wordwall. So this one is really useful for you to practice by yourselves. So you just put in Google, for example, the name of the site, Wordwall, and the topic, comparatives and superlatives, or Wordwall and simple present, or Wordwall, verb to be. El tema que quieran practicar, lo buscan así en el navegador, and you will get practices like this one. Okay, and the good thing is that at the end you can see your correct answers and the incorrect ones. Okay, in this case, it says the mouse is, and into parentheses we have the adjective that we need to use, that is small, then the cat. So is it more small, smaller, or smallest? What would you say? Smaller. Okay, very good. Smaller, the red one. Remember that we use them because we are comparing in this case two animals that they have a characteristic in common, the size. Very good. Then number 2, it says the red car is, and the adjective is big, than the orange car. Bigger, very good. Excellent. So as you can see, we doubled the consonant because it was the rule that we started: consonant, vowel, consonant. So the spelling of big is just with one G, but in the comparative form, it will be with double G, bigger. Very good. Then your car is, the adjective is fast, than mine. Excellent, faster. Bananas are expensive than apples. Okay, the red option, more expensive than apples. Would you say this is correct here in Costa Rica? Are bananas more expensive than apples? No, right? Do you think so? Like a banana will be more expensive than an apple here in Costa Rica? It's not true for us. Yes, definitely. hmm Maybe in other countries it is like that, but here in Costa Rica, bananas are really affordable. Very good, more expensive. Number, number five, a sunny day is good. Well, good than a rainy day. Better. And see that we have here one of the regular adjectives. So we don't say gooder, but we'll say better, the exception. Good. Kate is tall than Lucy. Taller. Excellent. Number seven. Planes are fast means of transport. The fastest. In this case, as you can see, we are comparing planes with different means of transportation, like for example, cars, bicycles, motorcycles, trains, subway, boats, ships, any other kind of mean. Okay, the fastest. Math is subject at school. The most difficult. Good. We are using a superlative comparison in this case. One class out of the rest of the classes. Football is then handball. More exciting. A comparative, a comparison. And the last one, French food is than Italian food. Worse. This was another of the regular ones, so we'll say worse than Italian food. Grammatically speaking, it'll be correct to say better, right? French food is better than Italian food, but in this case, it will be incorrect because they are asking us to use the adjective but. So we will choose worse. And this was the activity that I prepared to check the comparatives and superlatives, and now I will open a space just in case you have questions about what we studied today or about any other of the contents of the first lessons of the book. If there are no questions, then it'll be it for today. I hope you have a good night, and I will see you in the second session. Dayana. Yes, word wall. Word wall. Let me get back in the. This one, word wall. Welcome. Welcome. Any other questions? Todo en orden. Bueno, Alma, buenas noches. Buenas noches. Con mucho gusto. Buenas noches, con mucho gusto. Welcome. Good night. You too. Thank you. Bye. Hasta luego. Buenas noches. Sí, dígame, Jorleni. Sí, dígame, la escucho. Ajá, sí. No, las que no tienen valor, puede hacerlas todas las veces que quiera. Con mucho gusto, no se preocupe, buenas noches. Dígame. Claro, esto es lo que necesita. Ujú, ok. No, ese era un ejercicio de práctica para ver si habían entendido el tema. Ujú. Sí, en la orientación académica ahí viene detallado la evaluación, los quizzes y los exámenes. Ujú. Welcome. Dígame. Ajá, esos tres que tienen ahí, esos son los más importantes, los más usados. Ajá, ahí, perdón. Sí, no, ahí el otro que agregaríamos sería como many, pero ya many lo cambiamos a more most y little que lo cambiamos a less least. Pero en realidad con esos que tienen ahí están sobrados. Ujú. No, el adjetivo o el adverbio. Ajá, correcto. Así es. Ajá, el mejor podría ser el peor si decimos the least. Usualmente comparamos al mejor. Ajá, the best sería. Ajá, porque better es comparativo. Entonces, better than the best. Ujú. Claro, por supuesto. Ajá, exacto. Okay, thank you, Alman. Good night. Good night, Juan. Any other questions or comments? Good night, Adonis. Thank you, you too. Eduardo, Jafet, Daniela, Alison, David, Dalaya. Any questions? Well, I'll close the session here and I welcome David. Bye.